last year, where the free floats fell to 17.64%. It further depreciated to 15.03% at the conclusion of a voluntary tender offer in September. These and more reasons seem to be responsible for the delisting considerations. But the managing director of Ashaka Cement, Mr. Rabiu Umar, joins us now from our Abuja studios to tell us more about this delisting. It's good to see you, sir. Good evening.
Good evening, Temple. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much for coming through. And one will really think that the impact of the economic recession, as well as the activities of the Boko Haram on your plants in northeast Nigeria, is one of the reasons, or one of the reasons why you want to delist from the exchange. Is that correct?
Well, that's not entirely correct. The process of delisting from the exchange was a decision taken by the board of directors of Ashaka and has nothing to do with the current economic situation, which we believe to be a temporary blip in the economy. And secondly, the Ashaka is not going to disappear. I mean, I live in Ashaka, I live on the site, and I'm not going anywhere. The process will continue. We are not going anywhere. It was a purely in compliance with regulatory requirements of the listing. Today, we are in breach of that requirement. We have 15.03% of our shares that are tradable on the exchange. And as you know, the exchange listing requirements you're supposed to have in the minimum 20% of your shares tradable on the exchange, which is what we call free float. And that is purely the reason why the board of directors took a decision to take the voluntary delisting path.
So there are two exit options for an average shareholder, especially the minority shareholders who have their shares just stagnant in the market there. What are these two options that you've created or you've made available for them?
Well, the first option is that a minority shareholder today can decide to sell their shares on the stock exchange. It's still an option until the the process of the delisting is completed. A shareholder has the right to sell their shares on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. The second route is there's an option which is an extension of the voluntary tender offer that just finished, basically allowing the shareholder to exchange their shares for the shares of Lafarge Africa. Essentially, for every 202 shares of Ashaka, you can take 57 shares of Lafarge Africa, including a premium of 2 Naira per share.
And of course, your notice to the Nigerian Stock Exchange says that Ashaka Cement has had to bear some unnecessary costs in terms of meeting listing obligations. Will you be willing to share those obligations that you've had to comply with in recent times that served as burdens with us here?
Well, basically, I mean, there are listed requirements in terms of filing reports, in terms of conducting meetings, in terms of having annual general meetings organized. And these are all fine and good. And I think the listing requirements of making sure 20% of the float of the shares are on free float is to make sure that you have an adequate number of shares that are owned by a large number of people that are supposed to come for the AGM. But where that number gradually keeps shrinking, then it doesn't make as much sense to keep the company as a publicly listed company.
Okay, we know you have a good relationship with Lafarge Holcim, Lafarge Africa. Tell us how this delisting plans concerns them.
Well, basically, like I said earlier, this is purely an Ashaka Cement PLC decision. Lafarge Africa, of course, has links with Ashaka, but the decision was taken by the board of directors of Ashaka Cement PLC. So therefore, there's really nothing, I would say, directly linking the two. Be as it may, it's true that Lafarge Africa owns a stake in Ashaka, but the decision was taken by the board of directors of Ashaka Cement.
And of course, you should be having an extraordinary AGM meeting sometimes in December, and that is where we expect the decision, your proposal, to be given some kind of attention as well. Do you see the chances of rejection on the part of these minority shareholders?
I think it's too early to tell. The basic thing here is that 3/4 of the ownership of the company needs to vote for the voluntary delisting to happen, and then the second part of it is we need to have the regulatory authorities approve it, and then there's a 90-day window within which people can still sell their shares, after which the company will be delisted. What will happen? I'm very positive that shareholders will see the reason why we're doing what we're doing. Is purely for the reasons that we have outlined, and there's nothing outside that is driving the process.
Mr. Rabiu Umar, the Chief Executive and Managing Director at Ashaka Cement, thank you so very much for joining us on the program this evening. Now, the Egyptian exchange extended gains to the fourth consecutive week, gaining 5% week on week, as investors remain excited about the recent implementation of a flexible FX regime in that climb. The Kenyan NSE also added 0.8% week on week to remain where it is right now. And of course, you take a look at the screen, you see what other markets in the African region poses. The Johannesburg Stock Exchange returned 0.02% yesterday, Friday, and its week-to-date performance is in the green territory. The BRVM is about the only market that had a negative return yesterday, Friday, and its week-to-date is also in the negative territory, which is the red color. Capital Markets continues after this break.